Well, I'll start with a prayer and then let's do a brief meditation. I'll just do a prayer, so follow mentally. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar, beloved Guru, Paramahansa Yoganandaji, saints of all religions, we humbly bow to you all. Bless us with the awareness of thy presence. Help us to be deeply attuned to thee, and in that attunement, to be ever creative in everything we do. We are thine, be thou ours. Om, peace, amen. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Okay, so once again, welcome everyone. It's so nice to be able to share like this. Aaron suggested this morning that we talk about creativity and attunement. And so I'll talk for a little bit and then Davey will, and then we'll just have time for questions and or discussion, whatever seems to be the flow. Because this is meant less to be, it's certainly not meant to be a class. It's meant to be a satsang and a sharing and a kind of working together to achieve a sense of I don't know, unity in direction of what Ananda is. So first, let's start with what Ananda is. Ananda, put simply, is an attempt to create the very best environment possible for a devotee of Yogananda's to um, live and advance spiritually. So the emphasis in our communities is always going to be on attunement, on discipleship, on aligning our energies with those of Master. Why? Because he has not only achieved what we're wanting to achieve, what our souls are wanting to achieve, but according to the Indian scriptures, Master, or this line of masters, is uniquely qualified, uniquely given to us at the beginning of creation. This is our channel to find God. Now, that's true only for disciples of Master. It's not necessarily true, or of this path. I'm including Master's ray in that. It's not necessarily true for others. There are 8 billion people on the planet, and there are only a tiny, small minority, a couple of million people maybe, who are disciples of Master that are incarnated at this point. So that sense of what Ananda is about is to create the optimum environment for all of us, to have a place where we can live, be together with other devotees, and to live in such a way that we optimize the energies of this life in a spiritual sense. Now, so that includes all of our activities. It includes, the way we eat, the way we connect with each other, the way we serve, the way we, and in terms of this morning, the way we create. We should, just as much as we have to eat, we should be creative. It's not a question of whether we should be creative. Sometimes people will ask, well, don't they want me to be creative? Of course we have to be creative. We have to be creative all of the time. But that creativity needs to be in terms of attunement. So let me talk about it a little bit more specifically in terms of vibration. There's a book about Lahiri Mahashaya, and it is taken from his writings. As I read it, it's a little hard to know exactly where the writer has included some of his own material. That's why I don't talk about this publicly too much. But nonetheless, it's very interesting. So one of the things in there is Lahiri talks about the vibration of the different chakras. He said that the vibration of God is 0. God beyond creation does not vibrate. He begins creation by taking a small part. Lahiri said, at least in this book, that God takes 1/100th, 1% of his consciousness. And with that consciousness, he sets that into intelligent vibration, or he calls it passive or dynamic will. Isn't passive. It's, I think, still or dynamic will is the term he uses. But he sets that into vibration. And that vibration we know of as the sound of Om. But then he says, why do we meditate at the spiritual eye? Because the spiritual eye has the vibratory rate between 0 and 9. When you come to the medulla and the throat, it's 100. When you come to the heart, it's 1,000.
The vibration.
The rate of vibration. It doesn't say whether it's per second or what, but it increases tenfold at each chakra. So 0, let's call this 10, 100, 1,000. Navel is 10,000. The second chakra is Swadhisthana is 100,000, and the bottom chakra is 1,000,000. And so if you think in terms of vibrational rate, then you ask, where is this creative idea coming from? What is its vibratory rate? And that's why we tend to say, chant primarily Master's chants. Why? Because those not only have a very high vibrational rate, he said that he took many of those chants and brought them into union with God, meaning that he took those chants and brought their vibrational rate to either 9 or to 10 or less, put it that way. And so we chant those. Why don't we chant a lot of Indian chants? Well, Swami said that in many cases, what those Indian chants are, they have a rajasic vibration. The farther down you go in the spinal system, the more rajasic it gets. That's the rate of vibration. The faster it is, the more rajasic it is. A lot of the Indian chants are just meant to rev up the energy, and they are not very deeply devotional. And so people who don't understand and don't think in terms of vibration then want to say, well, what about the music I grew up with? I grew up with good old rock and roll. I'm going to take just rock and roll music, and I'm going to throw in Master's name a couple of times, or I'll throw in Divine Mother in the refrain, and then it'll be spiritual, and it'll be just fine. And so we had a fellow here in in the early years of Ananda. He only lasted about less than a year, but he was this huge fellow with a beard, and he came from the drug culture and the hippie culture, and he called himself something Lovejoy.
Freedom
Lovejoy. That's the name he gave himself. And he was, I don't know, 6'4", and huge guy, and he had this guitar, and it looked like a little ukulele, but he would slam on it. And so he wrote this chant that he was sharing with everyone, and it was, Divine Mother, I want to see you right now. Thump, 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 thump. And for him, that was a highly spiritual chant. But you see what I mean in terms of vibrational rate. That vibrational rate of that, I don't know, was somewhere above 100,000, I'm quite sure. So he felt repressed for not having people here appreciate his wonderful music. So coming back, so creativity has to be a part of our lives. We should be creative in everything that we do. But our job is to try to make our creativity as reflective of Master as we possibly can. And that's true for us as individual devotees. It becomes even more true when we try to share with or teach others. So here at Ananda Village, you can play any kind of music you want as long as you've got headphones on. We don't encourage people to play music that takes them away from the vibration of Master, but it's your own affair. That's your own choice. But if you live in a group house and you want to share that music and play it through the loudspeakers, then you have the other people in the group house that you need to be um, cognizant of, and try to take their desires to be in tune with Master into account. And even more, if you want to use Ananda as a venue to share your music, since that's what we're talking about right now. But it applies to any art form. And so the wider you want to spread it, and the more you want to say this is coming from Ananda, the more responsibility you have to make sure that it's in tune with Master. And so in terms of creation, we have a number of times over the years fought the battle about classical music because we have some wonderful musicians here. And it's been more in Europe that this battle has been fought than in America, because frankly, classical music by and large is appreciated more in Europe. Uh, Nonetheless, there have been people there who want to know why we have these wonderful musicians, why we can't do classical music concerts. Now, Swami loved classical music. He listened, not all the time, but he listened to the great composers. He grew up with that culture. He grew up singing classical music, playing the piano. And so he came from that. It was not that he did not appreciate classical music. And privately, he would sometimes listen to classical music because it does have a high vibration. But then you have to, if it's going to be presented as this is what we're doing from Ananda, then you have to ask the question, does it have the vibration of a high enough vibration to represent Master and this path? Does that mean that we should never create music? No, we should create music. We should just try to create it in as much alignment as we can to Master's high vibration. And if we do that, as Master said, much more is needed. When Swami said, I don't want to write books. And Master said, oh, haven't you written everything that is needed? Oh, much more is needed. Much more is needed in terms of all of us being creative. But Swami himself, and I'll end with this, was incredibly careful about the kind of vibrational work that he did. We watched him edit, and he would sometimes edit a piece 50 times. And a page, a chapter. So a chapter in a book. Let's take, for instance, a chapter in the path. So he had a 4-part process. The first was to get his ideas down, and that he got down as quickly as he possibly could so that he could not lose his thoughts, because his thoughts, he was trying to pull those thoughts from attunement with Master, and as if Master was guiding his thoughts. So he was trying to get those down and not lose anything. Then he went back and he made sure that they were clear. So did he state something and it wasn't clear? He would ask himself, does this sentence really mean what I want it to? He said most writers never ask that. They make their sentences purposely obscure. So it shows that they're erudite, or that, there was a movie we said, and little girl says, that was wonderful, Mr. Duchesne. I didn't understand a single word. Mr. Duchesne was reading from the Bible. So make it clear. Then he made it magnetic, and finally he made it beautiful. And in that phase, he would go through, and it would be one tiny little thing. He'd read it and reread it, and he'd say, no, this word at the end is wrong. I need to shift this sentence so that it ends more strongly at the end. So what I'm saying here is that it wasn't just spontaneous. There was a lot of work in it, and all of it was meant to be as clear, as powerful, but here importantly, as attuned to master as it was possible. And the wider we share, the more responsibility we have to do that, especially if we're sharing with others or teaching others. So,
Okay. Thank you, Jyotish. That was wonderful. First of all, it's so wonderful to see all of you. And for those of you who I owe letters in response to, I will answer you. It just, sometimes it takes a little longer. Um, I think you may have heard me tell this story, but in the first year I was at Ananda that fall, I was so impressed with the cooking that was happening here. And I had always been interested in cooking. And so I just happened to see, I didn't have much contact with Swamiji at that time at all, but I just happened to be somewhere where he was. And I said to him, sharing this idea that had come, Swami, I was thinking of writing a cookbook, of an Ananda cookbook of all the wonderful recipes here. And his response really surprised me. He said, oh no, don't do that. And don't do that yet. And I thought, and he was strong about it. And I thought, well, what difference does it make if I write a cookbook? You know, it might be helpful to Ananda. But over time, I came to understand that what he was trying to guide me towards, and I can't help but sound like an old timer, because I look back on these decades with Swamiji and I see he was always, always trying to guide every individual to their highest self in every way, whether it was writing or uh, mechanics or teaching or whatever it was. That was his goal. And that's what Jyotish and I are trying to do for all of you. Guide you all in your highest expression. And sometimes it's not easy because you want to do what you want to do. Just like I wanted to write a cookbook. What harm is that? But Swami, and it was important for many reasons, because he was saying, listen to me, I'm trying to help you. This isn't the right time for you to write because you're just coming out of college. Your mind is more intellectual. If you start writing now, you'll circumscribe, you'll get into a flow with writing that will be not where you need to go with it. And then little by little, he started asking me over time to write. Would you write the introduction to this book? But because by that time I was meditating deeply, I was trying my best to be a good disciple and to be in tune. And then he said, okay, now start gearing your writing because you're starting to show attunement. Now it will be spiritually beneficial for you to write. You see the difference? And it's subtle, but it was, and now, you know, we do a lot of writing. We do our blog every week. But by the way, Lakshmi, when you did the introduction of us, you said they're bi-weekly blog. It's every single week, believe me.
bi-weekly for each of us.
Right.
But
Anyway, and so now the process is something so different. Because as I began writing, as Swami encouraged me to write introductions for this or that, it was like halfway in between. I was trying to draw master's thoughts, but then I would still fall back into kind of an intellectual thing. But now, very often for both of us, we'll say, gosh, it's my turn to write a blog. I have no idea what to say. And we'll sit down and these wonderful ideas will come. And we're coming up to each one of us 200 blogs that we've written. And, starting in 2013, every week. And I'll tell you, writing the blog is the high point of my week. Honestly, it is, because first of all, I cut everything else out. No phone calls, no emails. I just focus on that. No meetings. But more than that, I feel Master guiding my thoughts, and it's just a joy. But I had to wait. I had to wait because Swami has this wonderful book, The Artist is a Channel, and he saw all creative expression. And he, was as we know, all the arts that he uh, expressed himself, his attunement through, but he saw it always art as a channel for the divine. Not, oh, I just have to express myself. And that's what I was doing with the cookbook. Oh, this is fun. I want to express myself. No, you, because because art is intuitive on the highest level, and intuition is how we perceive the whispers from eternity. And the more you're on the path, the more thrilling it really becomes, because you feel, the more you try to attune yourself, you feel God coming to you in the littlest ways. How to do this, how to do that. What should I add to this dish? How can I clarify that sentence? And more you feel it's not you doing it. That's the point. As long as you feel it's you doing it, you're not really tuning into the flow of divine energy. And sometimes Swami would give a talk. More it was with his writing. He would read something he'd written and he would say, wow, that's really good. I wish I'd written that. Or someone would quote something he'd said in a talk, and he was so non-identified with it because it was just a flow of creative energy. So how does this apply to your life, all of you, each of you? Because creativity is a part of spiritual development. It's expressing things in an expansive, attuned way. And so just to keep working on, start with any project you want to do. Master, how would you do this? What do you want to say? That's why when we write the blogs, we both always ask the question, Master, what do people need to hear? What do you want to say to them today? And I don't know, the responses we get are, they're just overwhelming, in the sense, the blog that came out yesterday, there were almost 30 comments, and almost all of them said, this is just what I needed to hear today. And we didn't know. How could we know what people in Germany and Italy and Spain and, Nigeria, what they needed to hear today, and India, of course. But Master knew what they needed to hear. And so that's our guide. Master, how can, and we see this, the community here at the village, which, we're more familiar with. I'm looking at Dion and Artie, they're sort of center screen right now. And we just had a Sangha every year in January. We have an all Sangha department meeting. And people share what they've done the previous year and what their goals are for the coming year. And my gosh, the creativity that comes out of there. And Arati with the Spanish ministry, it's just astonishing what they're doing. And Dion with the events and all the things that are happening in outreach. But maybe you better turn off your sound, Arati and Dion. So you don't hear what I'm about to say. But when, not just them, but everyone, the online team, the whole team, the communications department, the fundraising department, so much creativity, but all in attunement, because it's all done in service to Master. And you can feel it, and you can feel how Master is guiding their creativity. So, art is a channel. Everything you do in life, try to say, how can I express God through this? Not what do I want to do, but how can I express God through this? Because, and I'll tell you a little story and then we'll open it up. I was a big fan of Broadway musicals. Still am, but to a lesser degree. But I must admit, we watched My Fair Lady the other night, and the songs are still in my mind.
She's under a ban. She may not sing any of those songs out loud because they stay in my mind too. And I'm not such a big fan of having Broadway musicals running through my mind. But okay, go on.
So, and then this was during Swamiji's lifetime. He was living in Europe at the time, in Assisi. But at that point, he would let people take seclusion in his apartment. And so I was taking a week-long seclusion in his apartment. And I had a little disc player, and I was listening to Master's talks and, things like Swami's talks. But then after, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 days, I started getting a little restless. And I looked over on Swami's rack of CDs, and there was the wonderful operatic singer Kiri Tiawa singing Broadway hits. And it was Swami had it. And it was like he was saying, and so I put it on and I listened to it, and it was wonderful. I loved it. I just loved it. But it was like Swami was saying, it's okay. You've been making a very deep spiritual effort. Just relax and enjoy yourself. And it came from him. But, it was, so what I'm saying is, life as a devotee, a lifelong devotee, and to each of you, and I hope you all have the good karma to be lifelong devotees. It's the greatest gift in the world. But to trust that God is guiding you in every step of your life, every aspect of your life, everything you do, every word you say, how you interact with people. And it's not easy. It's not easy at all. It takes incredible self-discipline to stay centered in God. But without it, boy, you just go down the rabbit hole. And so to be free to be yourself, but to use creativity as a channel for deeper attunement. And if you do it in that way, it becomes such a blessing. And, we all listen to Swami's music, and Bhagavati and Ramesha, you're not on the screen anymore, it's okay, but you were on. But God bless you and our musical team all over the world for keeping Swami's music so strong and so alive, because it's such a channel for God and Guru, his music, because he created it that way. He created it as a channel, and Master said every one of his chants, he went into a state of super consciousness. And if we chant them, we too can get into that flow. So it's a wonderful topic, and we could go on for quite a long time, but I think it's more important for all of you to have a chance to share. And the spiritual life it's a gift beyond anything we can imagine. And we can go sideways with it. We can be self-willed with it. We can go anywhere we want with it. But it just delays our ability to live in a state of joy. So it might be fun in the moment. Oh, I'll go and hang out and do this and that. But the more we can stay moving forward towards God, the quicker that joy comes. So, yeah.
Yeah, so you can type in a question that's probably easier, or you can unmute. But if everybody starts talking at once, but if there are comments or things to share and so on, then please do unmute. And now we want to have it more of a discussion. But I just want to kind of summarize, the key thing is whatever you're doing, ask Master, is this the way you would do it? Is this what I should be doing? How, please guide me. If the mere asking of that question is most of aligning, because, I mean, Zach and Haley, they're organic gardeners, but the whole process of Camino Island is so much in tune with Master and his teachings that you just feel it when you're there. Master never gardened, or never taught gardening, certainly. So how does he know how to garden? Well, he does. The divine, he's the channel to the divine. So merely asking is most of the thing. And then the other thing that's essential is to work in a cooperative spirit with other people, and especially those who have been asking that question sincerely and deeply for a long time. Okay, discussion.
Sindra had a question.
Go ahead.
Jyotish and Devi.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you so much. That was so just so inspiring, and just to hear your words and just all the experience you've had over the years and just working so closely with Swami. I think a lot of our generation, those of us in our 20s, 30s, and 40s, we're just, I don't know, maybe there's just a natural creativity that we have and want to share and express. But yeah, at the same time, we're both that, but we're both sincerely sincere seekers, and our souls want to be in tune with Master. And you really shared a lot of how we can bridge that gap. And I look at, the time I've worked with Bharat and him being so creative, and on the surface for people in the world, it might not have anything to do with the spiritual path, but it was interesting being with him, and all the time he said, I meditated on each activity of sharing nature. He meditated deeply. He was always constantly asking Master. And, in my process of working with him, I had this kind of instant feedback if I had an idea, or creative idea, and he would, in a way say, no, or try this, or try this, or try this. And I can't say I'm any more creatively attuned, but it was so helpful to have somebody like him kind of as a sounding board constantly, to see kind of how to refine my creativity to be in tune. And, I had the fortunate to still be working closely with him. And it seems like for a lot of us, maybe, because we're both creative and sincere and wanting to be attuned, how do we, might be helpful, I wonder, at some point, to have some people our committee, I don't know, maybe committee is not the right thing, but a sounding board for ideas that we have. And I've been kind of thinking about this for years, and how helpful it could be, because how do we really know sometimes? Because we feel inspired with something. And anyways, just a comment. I don't know if it's a question or not, but it's what it is.
Yeah, that's a really beautiful comment, because Bharat is a very good example who has taken the vibration and applied it in a completely different way, in a way that, especially his earlier books, you wouldn't know that he was any kind of a devotee. You felt a centeredness and a power, but it wasn't like he used a certain costume or certain wording, but the vibration was there. I remember a time sitting with Bharat. He was writing the Om book, and we had gone for a walk, and we sat down, and there was a little brook and a little kind of a 6-inch waterfall that made this noise. And we were talking about the sound of Om, the Om book. And then at one point, Bharat said, let's just listen to the sound of Om in the water, because that will help guide us. And, so it's that creativity. So coming back to kind of the comment question, I don't think a committee is helpful. Creativity is such a, uh, I don't know, personalized thing. I think what would be better is to have somebody or a couple of people, a few people that you really trust their attunement, who are more attuned than you are, and talk to them about your creativity, your ideas, your flow. Because frankly, most people won't be open to hearing from a committee. A committee is kind of designed to make things not get too out of hand. So there probably should be a musical committee about what music can be performed at certain events. That's only to get it from being too much, you know, getting too wild. But for personal creativity, I think one-on-one,
Mm.
sensitive, open conversations, because when we get creative, one of the problems is I want to do it my way. And that my way is not, there's, your way is not always God's way, And so have somebody that you can trust enough to be able to hear their feedback and not think, oh, they're trying to suppress me. But they have, as Devi said, Devi and I really, our desire is to help everybody at Ananda move in the direction that their own soul wants to move in. And so if we say, I don't know that it's the right time for you to be doing that, it isn't because we want to keep things unified on an Ananda level. It's because we feel that that what would be good for the soul, for each person's soul, needs to unfold in the right way. As Devi used that story so well, if she had written, it would have closed down certain parts of her if she had started writing too soon. Later on, Swami knew that she was going to write, I'm sure. He wasn't saying, no, no, you can't. He was just saying, not yet, not yet, because you need to spend some more time asking the question, Master, is this what you want? So anyway, that's comment there.
Just a brief comment too. It's such an important question, Sundara, um, and Bharat is a beautiful example of that. But, you know, for example, almost everyone I know of my peer group, when we're about to launch a project, like even with our little blogs, we ask each other, do you think this would be a good, if we don't have an idea or if we've written it, read it and see if you think it's good. Is this story fit there? Should I take out that? Because it's good to get feedback. That's the whole point. It's hard to see it yourself. And, in the early, when Swami was writing The Path, now it's called The New Path, he would every once a week, I think it was Wednesdays, but I'm not sure, he would have everybody come over to his dome, everybody in the community. I was living up at the meditation retreat at the time, and I remember we'd all get in the back of a pickup truck because nobody had cars, and we'd all drive down, and he'd read us a chapter, and he'd say, what do you think? And we were all new on the path. And no one would say anything because we thought, well, this is a great man and he's written this chapter. But then he got really strong with us. He said, I want your feedback. I need your feedback. Does what I've written make sense? Is it, does it helpful? And then little by little, we started giving him feedback and he really appreciated it. That was Swamiji. So, it's like, it's always helpful with people you trust. And of course, what Swami was doing at the same time was helping us to get into it, because it's not like he took every suggestion. but you know, he wanted us to be thinking creatively and joining his process. Okay, there's a question from Julia from Spain, and she asks, what are the most common signs you experience when you perform an activity that leads you toward your highest possible potential? I expect it pushes you to transcend your biggest fears, and wanted to know if it's always that way or not necessarily. Wow, these are great questions. So what are the most common signs? Does it transcend your biggest fears? No, it doesn't transcend your biggest fears. It's a sense of incredible joy and expansion. And it's like, just like when Swami would read something he had written after a period of time, wow, I wish I had said that. You know, so it's more opening your heart, being calm inside, feeling like you're doing it with Master, that he's doing it with you, through you, in you, around you. And it's a sense not of overcoming fears, but of feeling utterly a sense of profound well-being, if that makes sense. I know I'm looking at Bhagavati and Ramesha, watching them sing or perform on an instrument, one just feels their profound and I say this is the highest possible compliment. When you two are singing or performing, I feel you are more you than anything else you do.
Because there's no you there.
Because there's no you
just,
there. Yeah.
It's just the flow of the music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'll add too about confronting your fears. Honestly, that doesn't, I'll speak personally, that doesn't come in terms of creativity very much. It comes in terms of when I'm in a reactive state, then I need to look at what is causing that reaction. And that is not the time to be, oh, I think I'll be sharing all of this with everybody, because our path is to get to the point where your reactive state has been lowered. And that's why when you're discussing something, discuss it with somebody who's less reactive or more calm or more attuned than you are. Don't most people, when they're reactive about something, here talking about a big fear you might have, you try to seek out somebody that has those same reactions because you want to resonate on that. And all that does is to reinforce the reactions. That's why Swami has never had kind of, when, put it this way, when Swami was working in Europe, there was a group called Peki, and he was trying to bridge the gap.
Charismatic
Christians, bridge the gap between yoga and the Christian church. He always had an interest in that. Well, they had a kind of a process where they would bring people into a room, and there was this kind of committee, and they would tell everybody their faults. And Swami, that was terrible, because it was all on an egoic reactive level. And he didn't like these group sharing processes so much, because it was basically, I don't like this. What about you? Do you not like this too? And that kind of thing, sharing is of course important, but the question should be, I don't like this. How do you think I can be more in tune with this? Not, see what I mean, what the difference is? So in the question about, transcending fears and creativity, I tend more to get a little inspiration and then want to express that.
Okay, there's a bunch of nice questions that's come in. This is from RT and Dion. Attunement is often very subtle, and one may think they're acting from attunement, but is only basing decisions on their likes and dislikes. What are some qualities of attunement to look out for? Well, I'm going to throw this out to all of you. I mean, we could give an answer, but I bet you know some of the things. Why don't some of you, what do you think qualities of attunement are? I'm going to put you on, okay, put you on the spot. Zach and Haley, what do you think qualities of attunement are? When you're coming up with a new plan for the garden or a new area to develop, how do you use creativity?
The first thought that came into my mind was just calm joy. It's not necessarily excited. It's you can feel really joyful, and yet there's a calmness about it that you recognize the source is not really in yourself, in the egoic sense, but truly yourself in the big sense.
Kalamali, you do a beautiful job with so much of what you do with marketing and layout. How does attunement express through what you do?
Definitely calm joy, but also it often feels harmonious and expansive because it's what's trying to happen. So what you'll see is like there's this dynamic group energy that's already in this flow that it kind of becomes a part of the whole, and you may not have even known it. So like with the garden, it's that one plant, but maybe there's this harmony with the other plants that then you see later once it starts to grow.
Erin, how did you develop, you have this incredible new project for conscious families. What qualities of attunement did you use in developing that?
I think receptivity, just staying open to ideas to come from anywhere. And like Kalamali was saying, that when you do that, there then tends to be this grace, this harmonious flow where things match and things line up in a way. And then you kind of feel like, oh, I must be going in the right direction. And when things are not, and I can just feel it. I can feel when I'm trying to make something happen and it won't work and it won't go at the time that I want it to happen. So I just let it go for a little while. And then all of a sudden it'll just happen in some other way, in some other moment. So just paying attention.
That's such an important point, Erin. When you're in tune, the doors open. And when you're not in tune, the doors don't open. And I think we've all experienced that. Okay, I see Vairagi and Aramati. Vairagi, you do a lot of work with helping Ananda to stay financially, balanced. And how do you use attunement in the work you do? Something even like financial management and oversight? Because I know you must, watching you.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a process of staying centered, I think, and just being a little bit detached from what is happening around you, and being watchful, and kind of riding the waves. There's always ups and downs, and there's always stuff moving, but if you can stay centered through it and ride it.
Very good. Very good. These are all, everything we would say. Now I'm putting, everybody's probably nervous, but Gayatri, you started a new job in the last couple of months working with our development department, fundraising, and you're doing a lot of work one-on-one with people. How are you using attunement to do that work?
Yeah, I think I ask.
We can't hear you very well.
I just ask a lot in meditation. What does God want of me? What is leadership asking of me? And what is like the inspiration I feel in my heart? And when the three are like in line, that's what happens. And when one feels conflicting, that's usually when I feel like there's a missing attunement on my part, because nothing really happens. It hits resistance, but when the three are flowing in the same direction, beautiful things seem to happen.
What are the 3 points again?
What does God want of me? What is leadership and mentorship asking of me or suggesting advice for, and then, you know, what is creative in my own heart that I feel inspired by.
Wonderful. And Peter, while we have you both on the screen, you've done so many creative things in your life. Peter, just from woodworking to music to teaching many, many things. Peter just made 2 beautiful handmade tables for the Temple of Light here for the ministers and so forth. But why don't you talk about how you use creativity and what the signs of attunement are when you're doing creative projects?
Well, I think other people mainly mentioned it. The calmness and expansion are big ones. Making those tables, there was different steps that I didn't actually know how to do along the way, but I would just keep following this little thread of inspiration. And sure enough, when I would get to the point where I needed a solution, there would be a solution to that problem of how to make that one part or whatever. And there was different moments too where these thoughts would just keep getting put in into my mind to, you know, it would just be more beautiful if this was curved here or that, you know, the different wood or whatever. It'd just be a little bit more beautiful, it would express beauty more is really what I'm trying to say. And it was just there could be a thread that I would just sort of keep pulling on. I wouldn't have all the answers all at once, but it was a sweet process of continually tuning in and learning to trust that. I think that's learning to trust that would come is an interesting process.
Very good.
You know, you'd be right in line with an interview with Elon Musk if he were interviewing you. What he did was he would ask the people who wanted to work for Tesla or SpaceX. He asked the engineers, what was the 3 most difficult problems you had and how did you solve them? And if they were just kind of making things up, they wouldn't know details. But if they were really creative people, they would start into it and they would say, well, you know, I was going to curve this piece, but it didn't feel right in the way that and they would offer all of these details about their creative process. And he knew that those were the people because what they were, there's a common link. They're all getting themselves out of the way and they're trying to do the project in the best possible way. And if somebody came along and said, well, I wanted to use this really flashy wood because nobody else ever used it, and it would really show me up as the prime woodworker around here, what good would that be, you know?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I just wanted to share, even in the inception of the idea of making those tables, it was an interesting lesson in that too. Because I actually was seeing, it was when you were speaking one time, Jyotish, and I was on the camera, and I was seeing the table that was next to you, and I was thinking, gosh, you know, somebody really ought to make it really would be better. So let's see, we need somebody, you know, it'd be great if it was a handmade thing, you know, somebody that, you know, knew how to work with wood. And I'm sitting there at the camera going, this really sounds like this is mine to do, you know. And then I mentioned it to Lisa Clark, and I was talking about making a table for the dais, and she said, oh, well, there's this other, she started mentioning the table between the chairs. Like she thought that's what I was talking about. And it was like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'm making 2 tables now. So it was more of that. I guess I'm trying to say that it was in front of me and it matched my own creative expression. So there wasn't anything. It was like, yeah, that was the inspiration. It was that there was something to be done and I had the ability to do it and do it beautifully. So.
Thank you. You know, Kalamali posted, never stop asking because the flow of energy can shift also. Very important point. Yeah. But Nara, I wanted to ask you, most people don't know you very well. He's the head of one of our meditation groups in Australia, but he also is a medical researcher and created an incredibly helpful thing. Do you want to talk about the process of how you created the respiratory aid? Because from what you've said, it was really a divine experience.
Well, I'll just clarify. I just work or got into the line of respiratory medicine through the grace of God. But yeah, it was just, I think the main part of it was surrendering. It was a process of attunement, as everyone's mentioned, but also—
Talk about what you created, though, because people don't really know.
Oh, okay. I didn't create it. I would just work for a company that does it, but the physiology comes through with it. So it's essentially using the homeostasis of how we breathe, so that when, for example, treating COVID, our go-to was always oxygen, and there's a misconception that we primarily breathe oxygen, and yet it's only a small percentage. It's less than a quarter of what we breathe. So it's using air that we normally breathe in and the homeostasis of how we breathe, which is around humidity and temperature and a few things like that. So it's a different process, and it's one that's now being used to prevent intubation and prevent a lot of the high level care with things like COVID. And and again, I can't take credit for it. It's not me. I just have the beautiful ability to be able to educate and teach medical people and doctors with it. So and I think, again, it just comes back to surrendering and opening your mind to allow the creative consciousness to come through.
You know, thank you, Nara. I want to share a story. Some of you may have heard of it, maybe not. You know, the man who developed the Pfizer vaccine for COVID, which is, you know, one of the two main vaccines, the Moderna and the Pfizer. He was a man of Turkish descent. His family came to Germany when he was a little boy, and his family was very poor immigrants, but he was very bright. So he went on and got a good education and began being a medical researcher. And then about 6 years ago, he was working on this mRNA vaccine. That's what the Pfizer vaccine is. And he was developing it for cancer. And a good friend of ours, many of you, we know her, Pia Singh, who lives in Delhi. Her mother was dying of cancer. And so she and her sister flew to Germany. They'd heard about this vaccine that he was developing for cancer. And they met with him, and he said, well, bring some DNA samples of your mother's to Germany and we'll see if we can help her. And he spent a great deal of time with them. So they came back with DNA samples from her mother to Germany. But by this time, the mother was almost passing. And so it was really too late. But they said, we want to thank you. So, and he said, we could have maybe helped her, but it's too late in the game. But she said, I really want to thank you. Is there some way I can pay you for all the time and energy you've given us? And he said, oh, no, I'm just here to help people. I have a job. You don't need to pay me. And so she brought him several copies of Autobiography of a Yogi in German. She said, you can read this and share it with your friends. But she also brought him a picture of Babaji. And he said, oh, I'm going to put this in my laboratory where we work. And he had that picture of Babaji in his laboratory. And he's the man that came up with the first COVID vaccine. Whether you're an anti-vax person or not, I'm not going there with this. But mainly that drawing from divine grace, the masters want to use our creativity as they did with Nara and the product, you know, what he was doing. So anyway, it's very interesting. Okay, so let's.
Yeah, we've kind of used up that question.
Yeah, there was another that question up there we didn't.
Swamiji was explosive in his creativity and sometimes groundbreaking. Can you give us any fun examples? How can we attune to that expansive, dynamic creativity and yet stay grounded in the here and now? Step-by-step process of hard work and practical attunement that will help manifest it.
This is from Gita and Badri and
Yeah.
Tulsi and Jay.
Yeah.
Probably Jay asked this question.
Yeah, probably so. Yeah, very interesting question. You know, one time we were with Swami in a shopping mall and he'd gotten a letter the day before, and he just kind of stopped and in the middle of this mall, and he said, you know, I got this letter, and the person was saying, oh, you're so great, you've done all these many things and you're so creative, you've done all these creative projects and I haven't done anything and I feel so inadequate. And Swami just stopped us and he said, I wish people wouldn't talk that way. He said, you know, I've just been at it a little bit longer. That's the only difference at all. And so the fact that he'd been at it, but he in particular was always really creative in what he did and how he led his life. And so, you know, if you take somebody who's a great, great athlete in America, I'll just use LeBron James. He doesn't just come into a body that is a huge body and completely quick and nimble and can leap over high mountains in just by happenstance. He's been trying to do that for a long time. And so he can do things that normal people can't. And so Swami had been developing attunement and creativity for a long time. So in one way, he's a good model. In another way, he's not such a good model. I would say the better model is when you have an idea, how do you get it grounded? And that's a really good question in there. And Swami would take that idea, but he didn't think so much in terms of just the idea. He thought in terms of how to share that idea. That's why he would read those chapters and ask us. He wasn't asking us to critique whether what he was saying was a good idea or not. Oh, gee, Swami, I don't think you should talk about that. He wasn't asking that. He was asking, is the way that I'm sharing this effective? Am I saying it in a way that you understand or relate to it, or does it create a positive feeling in you? That's the kind of thing. So you get grounded by thinking in terms of, does this work? So it's a balance between those two. Swami told me many times, Jyotish, you should be more creative. And I could hardly believe it because everything I did, my mind was always creating things. Finally, I got to understand what he was saying. He said, don't create with your mind, create with intuition. And so when I started painting, he really encouraged me. He said, very good. Painting will help make you more creative and more intuitive, because it had to do with a feeling. And then the grounding aspect was taking a feeling and figuring out how to express that feeling. And so colors and shapes and flow of energy, all of that, it's more of a feeling. And so I was being creative, but I was being mentally creative. He wanted me to be intuitively creative and then ground that intuitive aspect. So, and that was a good lesson for me.
And if Kalamali is on your screen, behind her is one of Jyotish's paintings.
Yeah, I'm working on a painting now, but I don't dare show it yet because it's only partway through, and it's for a dear friend of ours.
And
so
it's going, oh, you can say it's for Lakshmi,
it's for Lakshmi.
who's with us. And she commissioned it. And Lakshmi, it's going to be gorgeous. It's about 60% done, but it is, you're going to love it. The reason Lakshmi wanted the painting was Jyotish did a painting for their auction in Palo Alto. And so before it needed to dry, so she had it on her wall for a couple of weeks. And then the person who bought it took it and she said, oh my God, I need one on my wall. So she asked Jyotish if he would paint one. So just to add a few more things, and then I do want to ask, I meant to ask Bhagavati and Ramesha to talk a little bit about your creative process of sharing Swami's music, but I'll say a few things so you can think about it a little bit. So how to keep it grounded. That's a really, that's really the core of it. How do you know, if I'm understanding right the question, grounded meaning, is this grounded in our path? Is this grounded in helping me grow spiritually? And I think to try to use as a gauge the feeling you have in meditation, the calmness, the centeredness, the peace, the upliftment. And then when you move to creativity, am I feeling those same qualities? We didn't ask Suryani to speak, but she's choreographed some beautiful dances to, and again, you performed them at the 50th anniversary in a Spiritual Renewal Week one year, and they were so reflective. And I think anyone who saw them felt that, and Swami wanted to encourage dance, but in a way that it expressed our vibration, and you've done a beautiful job with that, Suryani. So Bhagavati and Ramesha, do you want to say anything about how, because you're using, fortunately you're swimming in the pool of Swami's music, but you keep it so pure. How do you do that?
Well, I just wanted to quickly say something regarding what Jyotish said, that Swami may not be the best example, because I remember one time in Italy when Swami was about to launch the Revelations of Christ in Italian, and we were going to perform a portion of the oratorio, and he was going to sing some solos. And so I went to his house to help him figure out the right keys, because his voice had gotten so low. So we had to change some keys, and he was going to sing Children of God. And halfway through the song, he stopped and looked at me and he said, who wrote these words? They don't make any sense. And, and then he changed the words. And this is why we have the new words for Children of God. So that is not, outwardly looked like that was like a whimsical change of words, but that is not the way he created.
Oh, did you want to say something else?
Go ahead.
Well, I was thinking about the question of using Swami as a model, and Bardry's question especially. And I was thinking what came up for me, and I feel like it's part of what we've learned, partly by watching Swami, but also just by trial and error. And that is, I think that Swami would have these high inspirations and these, so much to do, but it would, as far as I could tell, he didn't only worry about the artistic parts of creativity. He would also get really creative about how we're going to share it and where we should share it, and how can we solve this problem of it's not getting out here. And it was the whole package. It wasn't just the song, it was who's singing it, and how are they growing and singing it, and is it helping them spiritually to sing it, and where are the places we can sing it, and who's gonna write the article to help promote it, singing it. Was the whole thing. And I think that for me, I realized that being creative as a flutist, I did that for many, many, many years. And then I started singing. I had to start getting creative about being a singer. But more than anything, we've had to be creative about how do we work with people? and creative about that person needs some help about how they sing, you have to get creative about how you're going to tell them, how you're going to correct them in a way that is helpful. So to me, the creativity is like everything involved in the process is requiring our creativity. And I think that we can limit it if we start thinking it's only about the painting or the song or the dance or the, you know, sometimes people think that's being creative, but it's all of it that's being creative. So that's what I saw with Swami.
And also in terms of, you know, when performing, when we sing, I don't know, honestly, personally, what I always do before I go up and sing a song is I ask Swamiji to sing it through me. He wrote the song. He knows better than anyone else how the song is supposed to be sung. And all I do is provide the instrument. That's what I did. I trained the instrument, but I also spend, and Bhagavati can testify to this, I spend a lot of time just singing songs, you know, like I'm around the house and there's a song of Swamiji's that comes to mind and I just start singing it and I just try to really tune into that phrase or that. It's something that I kind of do all the time. I'm in the car driving down to the mailroom and I do that. And so it kind of keeps me a little bit in that flow, I guess. And it I don't know, but it's mainly really asking Master and Swamiji to do it. I really have, sometimes I tell him, I really don't know what this song how this song wants to be sung, but you do. And so that seems to work well. So I just keep doing that.
It works very, very well.
Yeah. You know, Bhagavati said something, and I just want to touch on it, that about working with other people. And we need to be creative in the same way. Some of us work with groups as you do with choirs, but all of us work in some way with other people. And the same process needs to be there in our interactions with other people as with any kind of creativity. And so if you think that a person needs to make a change, one, you need to ask, Master, do you think they need to make this change? Not me, that's my reaction. And if you get the sense that they should, let's say that they're singing a part wrong, then you get the sense, well, Swami would say, yes, they do need to make a change. Then you have to ask, how are they open to hearing about that? Not, I'm going to tell them, I'm going to the more you think about yourself in any process, the less likely you are to tune in. And so in working with people, don't think about what I want, what I should say, what I feel. Think about what would be helpful. Swami would sometimes wait years to tell a person the most obvious thing because he knew that they weren't open to it yet. And Swami, one of the things that he was really strong with us about was don't tell a person too much about that, you especially stopping their process. Oh, we tried that and it won't work. He didn't like that. He said, you may know it won't work, but they don't. They need to learn that. So he tended to let people go. And I'm saying this in terms of not just Davy and me, but in our working with other people, let people have the freedom to try something, if at all possible, unless it's doing damage, unless it's hurting. And then you need to step in a little bit more.
There's one more question, but before we get to it, I'm going to put somebody on the spot here because I've been watching your attentiveness the whole time. Matthew, you're on the screen with Neha. You've made a huge shift in your life from being a professional athlete to being a yogi. How are you re-channeling your energy and your creativity into being here?
Yeah, Thank you for asking. I think the rechanneling is just kind of allowing that flow and that ray to come through, because I've always kind of had that focus with the sport itself. But that was a very physical thing. And I didn't have
Professional baseball player, just so people don't know. Okay.
Yeah. And so that didn't have kind of the heart aspect within it. So it seemed like as I was developing in that, I was kind of becoming more of the world. So once I started to understand that that wasn't quite what I wanted to be, then that focus shifted and the sport itself lost its meaning in my life. And that's what kind of pushed me into just needing to open my heart. And then that focus immediately went from the outward expression of what baseball was to, okay, how am I going to find that meaning? And
Beautiful.
to this path.
Beautiful. And then there's one last question if there's time. Yeah, we have time. It's up to you. That came from Armati and Vairagi about sharing. We want to keep Ananda's output at the highest level. Not everyone can reach that high state. How to put out the level of attunement we are at to those for whom it would be the right thing. Yeah, you know, as we develop more and more attunement, what we put out will be, let's say, at a higher vibrational level, since that's how we started out talking about attunement. But nonetheless, we find ourselves somewhere in in any project or any thought, we find ourselves somewhere in a vibration between 0 and 1,000,000. And let's say we're at 1,000, and maybe somebody else could express this at 100, but for us, our level of expression of this is at 1,000. Do we not express? Do we say, oh, I can't express anything until I'm clearer? That isn't the right answer. It's the right answer is that we have to express things, but do it in a more contained thing. So if you're at 1,000, maybe instead of writing a book, you should write a blog and share that blog and share one thought at a time and try to make that blog the most attuned, the best that you have, and share it with a relatively smaller group of people. And then as your attunement rises, then it's like it's natural that you should have a bigger and bigger stage to share. And so, you know, to put it in practical terms, here at Ananda, a lot of people, I would say a quarter of the people are doing teaching in some way or another, online or in person or in those ways. But we don't have somebody who's, I don't know, not yet developed, be one of the main teachers for the internet and reaching 1,000 people. You need to develop, or 100,000 people, you need to develop an attunement. So teach in smaller ways and then gradually more and more, but always listening to feedback about, was this in tune? Am I expressing something? Am I doing it with too much ego? What does too much ego mean? Oh, I'll express this in a way that they'll look at me. What a great teacher I am. We should be absolutely invisible as teachers if possible. And just the material coming through.
But I'll also share a story that kind of contradicts what Jyotish just said about.
This is part of our process.
But one of the first summers at Ananda, a young man came here from Los Angeles, and his name was Stephen Blake. And he was 18 years old. And he was very shy and not very articulate. And he later, Swami gave him the name Haridas, and he and his wife Roma are head of our center in Bangalore. Wonderful, saintly person, a dear friend. But that first summer, Swami was going to give, I think it wasn't the very first, but early on, he was going to give some lectures in Los Angeles. And he said to Haridas, he said, look, you're from Los Angeles, you know the city. Can you go and be an advanced man and try to set up some publicity for me? And so Haridas happily said, yes, I'll do that. And so he was able to get an appointment with the man who had the biggest afternoon TV talk show in LA. And so Haridas went there and he spoke to him and he said, well, I'm wanting to set an appointment for Swami Kriyananda. He's a direct disciple of Paramahansa. You know, he went on and on. But Haridas had this charm about him, even though he was kind of shy and not very articulate. There was always this incredible openness and purity of heart.
And enthusiasm.
And enthusiasm. And so the interviewer was just taken by Haridas, 18-year-old. And he said, you know, I don't want that Swami on my show. I want you on my show. And big show in LA.
It was just to clarify, it wasn't an afternoon, it was a morning talk show, and it was Good Morning LA.
Oh, right.
And it was the most popular morning talk show in all of Los Angeles.
And so Haridas was shaking in his shoes, and he called up Swami. He said, Swami, I've done something terrible. They said they don't want you. They want me on the show, and I can't go on the show. And Swami, again, just showing his incredible openness, said, Haridas, if they want you on the show, you should be on the show. So you can imagine, I mean, I get shivers just thinking about it. So Haridas went on the show, and the interviewer asked him all these, he asked him, first of all, why do you wear that? He had a short sleeve shirt on. Where do you wear that metal band around your arm, his bangle? And Haridas said, my mind just went blank and I couldn't think of anything. And I just said, it reminds me of God. And Swami watched the show and he said, Haridas, that was a perfect answer because it came from your level of attunement. So anyway, just to show, if we're deeply sincere in our own spiritual seeking, anything you share can be helpful with others, but just let it reflect not you, but God and Guru. And then Swami would have given a much, a different answer. I won't even say better answer, just a very, very different answer. But that was hard. And again, why did Swami let Haridas do that? Because he knew in time he was going to be a public teacher and he wanted to break through the shyness, break through the feeling of inadequacy, giving him, and anyway, it was a beautiful story. And I just wanted to say, when Jyotish was talking about LeBron James and basketball, I saw Arati asking Dion, probably what's basketball or something like that, and him explaining it to her. So anyway, maybe now you know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bhagavati said, I think as our attunement builds, we become more magnetic and will magnetize more opportunities to share. Absolutely, right on. As that attunement grows, you won't be able to stop opportunities to share from coming. So,
and that's a very good point that Arati and Dion just added. Haridas did not want to do that show. He tried to get out of it, but Swami said, no, you should do it. I wanted to write the book. Swami said, no, don't write it. So I didn't write it.
So there was ego vibration in one and not in the other. Okay, well, maybe we have gone.
Aaron, anything you want to wrap up?
Yeah.
Can I share something?
Sure, Prashad, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to share the importance that the music has had on my spiritual life. And it's that it's very nice, I found, to integrate the music with meditation. And I'm sure we've all experienced this. And kind of like the highlight example is after the 8-hour meditation, Christmas, we end with like several of Swamiji's songs. And typically we pick the more like supernal songs like Love is a Magician. And it's a nice bridge between meditation and the rest of daily life. It kind of helps with that dilemma of how do we carry that consciousness from meditation into daily life. It's a bridge, and it's kind of like a key to get back there, I found.
That's a
And
really good point.
yeah.
And you've developed so much as a musician with your harp music at first. I mean, have you been learning the skill, of course? And that's an important thing too, the difference between the skill level and the attunement level. You've been improving in both, Prashad, and your music is really, as you are a channel when you, particularly with the harp and your voice as well.
Thank you.
You know, I feel like there's so much more to share. Can we take a minute and everybody write down something on the chat thing, and then maybe Aaron can send it to everybody, just how they try to develop attunement in their creative expression. Maybe everybody just write down something. We can't see them all at once, but Aaron will send them to everybody.
That's a great idea. Thank you. I also just wanted to especially thank you for taking the time this morning. I know we had a little scheduling confusion, and you were just so willing to say yes and show up for all of us. And I think what a special opportunity this was. I feel so inspired, and everything that was shared this morning, really, I think everyone should listen to this and hear this. So thank you for that. And I just would like to invite all of us to maybe share a blessing with Jyotish and Devi and send them some ohms as our gratitude for their divine friendship, for their graceful guidance and leadership and example to all of us. It's really an inspiration. This is a treasure to have this time with you. So let's just take a moment and feel from our heart that gratitude flowing towards our friends, calling on the masters to bless them and guide them in all they do for all of us. Let's rub our hands together.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
So just so we don't get mixed up again, so our next satsang is February 13th?
February 13th, and we can keep it at 8 o'clock for consistency purposes. That's fine.
Okay. And anything, any particular topic that we want to talk about? Any ideas?
Yeah, if people have ideas and want to put them in the chat or email me, or email Jyotish and Devi if you have an idea, we can, I don't have anything off the top of my head just now, so I'm sure we'll get some ideas coming in, and I will make sure to remind you and send them ahead this time. How to catch a mouse with love. Dion's idea was how to catch a mouse with love. That can be our topic for next week.
We caught a mouse last night.
Yeah,
for
but
those
with love.
Yeah, with love. He's in his little trap eating his peanuts right now.
Very sweet. There's lots of beautiful ideas coming in, so I'll collect those all and share those as well. Thank you both. And
thank you all for.
Thank you. And we'll sign off, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Jagadish, nice to see you, friend.
Yeah, nice to see all of you.
Thank you.